This happened when I was around 17 years old. Rather, it started happening at 17. It hasn't stopped. At 17, I felt lost in the world and stuck in a job I hated, working with people that didn't even like me. This had to do with my accent, as I was quite well spoken, so they thought I was a rich, entitled kid. It all started on a Friday shortly after work. The factory I worked in had half days on Fridays, so I would just spend the rest of the day wandering around the city. It had been a tough day of relentless mocking at work, and honestly, I felt like I was reaching my breaking point. While adventuring around the city, I decided to start looking for a new job. I've had enough of this. I visited the police recruitment center, the Army Center, Navy Center, the Air Force Center, and even the International Red Cross. I just wanted to get away from it all. I needed something new. After a few hours, I had a bag full of career pamphlets, but still had no idea what to do with my life. I turned around a corner and randomly saw a sign directly in front of me. I can remember it so vividly now. It said, "Free personality test. Are you curious about yourself? Come in." I looked up at the building, and in a big fancy sign outside, it said, "The Church of Scientology." Now before I continue, yes, I already knew about Scientology, but honestly, I had a morbid curiosity about it. What did I have to lose? I'd heard all the horror stories and rumored goings-on inside the church. But, Tom Cruise was my favorite actor. He seemed to have his life sorted out pretty good. You could call those my famous last words, right there. So, with a breath of courage and curiosity, I went inside. I was immediately greeted by a very nice lady. She asked me how I was doing and what she could do for me today. I asked if I could speak to somebody about the church and about the personality test from the sign outside. She smiled and said, "I would be happy to. Please, take a seat. I'll get you someone to speak to." After a minute, I was introduced to an older man named Alan. He was the head of my city's Scientology center. Alan took me to a small room. When we entered, I immediately noticed the large picture of L. Ron Hubbard. We sat down and cheerfully had a nice talk. I told him about how I was unhappy about where my life was going. I told him about how I wanted to leave, about all of the trouble I was having at work. He seemed genuinely concerned for me, and I felt like he wanted to sincerely help. After a while of talking, I agreed to do the personality test. He gave me the test and left the room, saying to hand the test to the receptionist after I had finished. 2 hours later, I finished it. Not joking. That's really how long it took. It was around 500 questions about anything and everything. Finally, after finishing, I handed it in to the receptionist, and she told me it would take some time to process. In the meantime, Alan had told her to take me to their private cinema and show me a film. I thought it was just gonna be some old room in the back with a TV on the wall. But no, they seriously have a private cinema. It could seat around 50 people and had a large screen in the front. It did feel a bit weird just being by myself in a cinema owned by a quote-unquote religion. I bet that hasn't happened to many people. Or maybe it has. I don't know. Anyway, I sat down and they started up the film. It was about 30 minutes long and consisted of the narrator explaining, quote, those strange feelings you sometimes get, unquote. And of course, it had some of that mediocre acting following along. I remember a section specifically about how much you doubt yourself, knowing you've locked a door, but regardless, still going back to check multiple times. At one point, for example, the film showed how a past event could have happened to your mother while she was pregnant with you, and how it could affect your life later on in a negative way. For example, maybe your mother got sick on a flight, so now you're scared of flying. Association by variables outside of your predisposed control. I also vaguely remember an example about rotten eggs and about how much an event involving them can hurt you. I know it sounds absurd, but in some ways, the film really made sense to me. When the film was done, I was taken to Alan's office. He told me my results. He said that I was extremely depressed, that I was one of the most unmotivated people he had ever met, lacking cognitive thinking, and that I was a waste of talent. Now clearly, this made me very upset, but Alan said he could help me. He gave me 4 books or so, along with a DVD. He told me to read the books and to watch the film before my course started. Confused, I asked, "Wait, what course?" Alan replied that he had signed me up to do a special course at the center. He convinced me that if I didn't do this course, that my life would soon spiral out of control, that now was the time to make the change before it was too late. He had me hand over some money, actually quite a lot of money, for the course, and said I would receive a follow-up email about the course, which was starting in a month's time. I left the center, ran home, and immediately started reading the books I was given. This was my entire weekend. I'd basically locked myself in my room and did nothing but read and reread those books and watched the DVD over and over again. Over the next week, I began taking notes about myself and my family. I emailed Alan with questions and concerns. I started resenting my mother for the outcome of my life. I began to think that she was the problem, that everything bad that happened to me was the result of her. It hurts to say now, but I started to treat her badly. I started swearing at her and did the best I could do to just ignore her. When I emailed Alan to talk about my mother, he told me that if she was the catalyst for my problems, then maybe I should consider, and I quote, disconnecting from her. I took his suggestions seriously, so I made plans to totally push her out of my life. A week before my course, I developed a sort of God complex toward everyone around me. What I read in those books told me what I should become. I saw everyone in my family as being beneath me. I knew the answers and the secrets that others only wished they knew. In retrospect, yeah, I became a truly spiteful person. Just days before my course, I was confronted by both my mother and my father. They said they were concerned about me, scared for me, and so they searched my room. my dad found and took out all of my Scientology books and the DVD. I was outraged. I screamed and cursed at my parents. I said horrible, wicked things to them. I told them how I was going to leave them and how I never wanted to see them again. It was their fault for all of this. Hours of arguing, back and forth. There were tears. There was crying. Thankfully, after all was said and done, they ended up convincing me that the church was a bad place, that it was trying to manipulate me, to brainwash me. They said that if I was so miserable at work, I should have just told them. The realization hit me. It was true. To this day, I can't believe I didn't say anything at work. Instead, I was dealt their blows, bottled it up, and crept to Scientology for relief. That night, after the arguing had finally stopped, they sat me down and comforted me. I really couldn't believe their reaction after the way I treated them for the past 3 weeks. All they wanted to do was to just keep trying to help me. It wasn't Scientology. No, it was my parents that truly cared for me. Now, I could see the truth for what it really was. The next day, I emailed Alan and told him I wouldn't be coming back to the church. He quickly got back to me. Why? He asked. He wanted to know if it was my family and if I was somehow being forced not to go. I ignored him. The follow-up emails that I received within the next several weeks were crazy. He told me that I should leave my family now and that I could just stay at the church. He tried to convince me that, once again, it was all because of my mother, that not only was she controlling my life since before I was even born, but that she was still manipulating it now, in the present. He even emailed me to say something along the lines of not being surprised if he were to read in the papers that I were to take my life within the upcoming days. There was a line, and he had definitely just crossed it. I just kept ignoring him. The strangest email that I got was one full of nothing but binary code, strings of zeros and ones just strewn throughout. I used a binary code translator, but the results were just a concoction of jumbled letters and numbers. None of it made any real sense. Eventually, yes, I blocked him. But apparently it didn't matter. It hasn't stopped, even to this day. About 2 or 3 times a year, I'll still get an email from the Church of Scientology. It's either asking how I'm doing or asking about my family. When I get them, I immediately block the email address that sent it. Again, it hasn't mattered. They just keep coming. It's always someone new, saying that they heard about my case and that they're worried about me. The whole reason I'm writing this is because I literally just got one the other day. It reminded me not only about my past, but how this could be a good warning for other people out there who might be looking for answers or for help. Please, I beg you, do not go to a Church of Scientology center. If they can make me into a spiteful degenerate within only a few hours, I hate to think what they could do with a person given a few months or a year. Due to their sustainability, what's really scary is that their tactics work. By the way, if anyone has any idea how to block an entire religion, or more appropriately, a cult, from my email, please let me know. And no, I can't just make a new email address. The one that I have is basically a requirement. Also, if you're lost in life, sad or upset, then please Please talk to your family or your friends. A doctor is someone that you know already has a true care for your well-being. When you're down, don't let others make you into a monster. And keep a question dangling on the intent of others. Take it from me. After this event, I got help, and now I'm happy. I'm confident. I'm me. And now, a commentary from the narrator. To further substantiate the validity of the author's story, I asked them a couple of questions. They offered to provide a bit of extra background information. The author believes that these events started taking place somewhere around 2010. While growing up, they said they spent a lot of time traveling. So, the accent that they mentioned in the beginning of the story is a mixture of British and American. As for where the events took place, they said that it happened somewhere within Britain. Of course, that's the most they could really elaborate, as they want to avoid any other issues that could pop up from divulging too much information. I hope you enjoyed the story. As always, thank you for watching, and be careful out there.